Hello and welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast presented by BetMGM. Brendan Glasheen, our normal host, not here today. This is a special edition of Payoff Pitch for opening day. I'm joined today by Anthony DeBundo. I'm Sean Zerillo. We're going to have a rotating cast of characters throughout the season alongside Brendan, myself, Anthony, Charlie DeSturgo, BJ Cunningham, potentially some of our other MLB contributors here at Action Network. But today, Anthony and I are going to take you through our favorite bets, our favorite underdogs, maybe some fade the public action for Thursday's 15-game slate. First time since 1997 that all 30 teams are scheduled to play on opening day. So that alone is exciting. This is basically a national holiday for me. I'm sure for Anthony as well. And we're going to jump right into it with our best bets. We're both eyeing the same game, but different angles. It's going to be the nightcap, 10 p.m. Eastern, between the Guardians and the Mariners. I'm going to let Anthony go ahead and kick it off because he likes a side in this matchup, pitching matchup between Luis Castillo and Shane Bieber.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the Seattle Mariners money line, and their team that has been the team of the Action Network baseball Slack channel and art group for pretty much the last year and a half. And I was a little bit of a skeptic, but the addition of Luis Castillo is what really took them into that next tier for me last season. You're going to hear me reference Stuff Plus a lot this season. It's a model developed, that baseball teams are actively using to grade their own pitchers. Stuff Plus loves Luis Castillo. He's been a pitcher that has struggled a little bit early in seasons and taken some time to get going. So that is one potential red flag here, but I think he's a much better pitcher than Shane Bieber, who he is opposed by in this matchup. So I'm going to take the Mariners on the money line up to minus 125. I think they're the better team. They're at home. Both of these bullpens are elite, as Sean's going to talk about. But when you look at Stuff Plus and you look at projected pitching ERA from those numbers, Castillo is a solidly better pitcher by 2 to 3 tenths of a run. And Bieber, his stuff, we've talked about this. He's on my list of pitchers to fade again, which I wrote for the Action Network on Tuesday. I'm not quite sure how he's getting away with it. I know a lot of it is driven by the Guardians defense, but Bieber's strikeout rate has plummeted. I mean, he was up to, 14, 12 per 9, 2020, 2021. He's down near about a strikeout per 9 almost now. So there are some real red flags with Bieber. He got away with it last year, I think, because of the deadened ball, and his home run per fly ball rate went through the floor. And that really helped him keep the run production down against him. But there are still some red flags, and it hasn't been like things have really changed for him in spring training this year. His Stuff Plus sitting at 93, 100 is considered average. So I still have some question marks about Bieber. And like I said, if he's not going to strike out more than one batter per inning, he's just not the same guy anymore.
Yeah, so I bet against Shane Bieber a lot last season, especially early on. Throughout the season, though, as he progressed, he did bring his expected indicators down closer to where he was at his peak. His velocity has fallen off relative to his peak. The sticky stuff getting banned definitely hurt him at some point, and it's slowly come back into the game. So it's tough to make an idea of what Shane Bieber actually is. I think it all kind of depends on, as you mentioned, how dead the ball is and whether he's able to keep the ball in the yard, how good his defense is behind him, and also potentially how much sticky stuff he's allowed to get away with putting on the baseball. But in terms of my favorite bet for this game, my favorite bet for opening day, I do like the under 6.5, especially at plus money in this matchup. Key number of 7. A lot of games end 4-3, but the under 6.5 at plus money, I actually like it to minus 106. I projected this total at 6.1. Good park for pitchers. Talked about Castillo and Bieber. You said there's about 2 tenths of a run in terms of difference between them. That's roughly what I have them projected at. 3.3 for Castillo, 3.5 for Bieber. So not a huge difference there. 2 pitchers with sub 3.5 expected indicators, though, for me. 2 top 5 bullpens, 2 above average defensive teams, and the Guardians in particular are going to do really well this year, even without the shift. They did not rely on the shift for their defense last year, which was a top 2 defensive unit in baseball. So opening day under in Seattle, my favorite bet, under 6.5 to minus 106. Anthony likes the Mariners as his favorite bet in the same game at around minus 115. Do you have a price target that you bet that up to, Anthony?
Yeah, minus 125.
Fair enough. I actually would lean to the Guardians in that matchup, but I think the under is just a better way to go about playing it. And if there's some early scoring against Bieber, frankly, that total jumps up to 7.5. I'm probably going to jump in on the under again as well. These bullpens are both absolutely stacked, and getting them fresh on opening day. Bieber gets knocked out early, the Guardians are going to roll through their relievers and try to keep it close. So provided it stays a relatively low scoring game. Early run or two, happy to jump in again on an under 7.5. Let's move to fade the public. Typically, we look at the team who is the most heavily bet on the day of the game. We're looking at these lines a day before these opening day matchups, so we don't have fully developed markets in terms of where the money is being allocated, but we're going to talk about a game where there is a substantial amount of money and bets on the New York Yankees over the San Francisco Giants. The Yankees at home for opening day in New York, which I feel like happens more often than it should, considering the weather that we have here at this time of year in early April, late March. But the Yankees coming in here as minus 180 favorites, and I would like them up to that number. I projected them at minus 192. You could bet them to minus 180 according to my projections. There's a massive difference here in terms of the defensive quality and the base running quality for both teams. The Yankees a top 3 base running and defensive club for me. The Giants a bottom 5 team in both areas. Yankees have the superior bullpen too. More than a half run in my ERA projection there. Model weighted ERA between Cole and Webb about 0.3 of a run, 3.05 to 3.4. I do like Logan Webb a lot. I think I bet him to win NL Cy Young at long shot odds. I do think he'll get victimized, though, by the Giants' inability to shift as much this year as they've been able to in previous seasons. So the Yankees for opening day at minus 180, my favorite overdog bet. Anthony, I'm not sure if you have any position on the game, but I am riding with the public on the Yankees over the Giants.
Yeah, it is interesting. Evan Abrams, our director of research at Action Network, had a great piece kind of looking through some trends of what is and is not profitable, and fading the public early on is one of the things that has done well for highly bet games early in the season. Underdogs and June or earlier who get a low bet percentage and see their line get smaller, 45% win rate, but you'd be up over $13,000 in a over 2,000 game sample betting $100 a game. So I know neither of us are big trends people. Like, it's not something we tend to look at, but definitely an article you want to look at. Interesting stuff like getaway days. Wind is certainly something we'll reference with trends, especially at some ballparks, something you have to watch early on in the season. As for this game, I don't have a ton. I'm wondering, when you look at this Giants lineup, there's not a lot of star power in it. And I do wonder when they go up against top pitching, will they get overwhelmed? Because I think that's a very real possibility. They have a lot of average to marginally above average guys, but not a lot of star power. And so that could hurt them when they face the aces of the aces, which they're going to see with Garrett Cole in this game. So I've got nothing on this matchup particularly, but definitely will be interesting to see. It's pretty rare. And one of the cool things about this new scheduling setup is you're going to see a lot more of these kind of matchups with Giants, Yankees. I mean, they don't really play very often. And so you're going to see a lot more fun matchups, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, kind of a goofy opening day matchup, but Giants do have some history in New York, so at least we get that element there. Let's move to our favorite underdogs for Thursday's opening day, and we have an agreement here on our favorite underdog. I'm going to give out another bet, but I'm going to let you take away one of your favorite teams from a futures perspective and also one of your favorite bets from opening day, a team that I said we will probably end up betting a lot this season.
Yeah, and it's the Arizona Diamondbacks. I mean, this is simple, right? I have a win total over bet on the Arizona Diamondbacks. I have a win total under bet from pre-Gavin Lux injury against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Julio Urias has had some questionable numbers coming out of the WBC, where he got hit pretty hard in that tournament, and his stuff plus was down a couple of ticks. So that is one area of potential concern. He's never really been an overpowering stuff guy to begin with. So, losing a little bit of stuff there could be a red flag for Urias. And Zach Gallen is a pitcher that I've been long for, 2+ years, and somebody that I have loved to bet on as an underdog. For years, it was the rest of this pitching staff was so bad, and Gallen was the only guy you could really trust. That's less the case now because, Merrill Kelly has been solid, but the projections love Gallen coming into this season, and I agree with it. 3.33 projected ERA, very impressive stuff. So, of course, the lineup is better for the Dodgers. They are the favorite, but at, plus 150 or better, I'm okay with the Diamondbacks. Grab some early plus 160, but good down to plus 150 on them opening day underdog.
Yeah, I projected the D-backs at plus 138, so I like them down to about plus 150 as well. I project Gallen and Urias as basically similar pitchers, both around 3.3 in terms of my weighted ERA. Also, don't love how Urias looked in WBC. His spring training numbers weren't great either. 6 strikeouts in 12 innings. So definitely some signs of concern for Urias there. But regardless, even assuming he's going to be at his typical effectiveness, I basically make him and Zach Allen equivalent pitchers. The Dodgers do have a better bullpen, better lineup, but I expect Arizona to improve their bullpen this season. They've clearly been hunting a lot of guys who rate very highly in terms of stuff plus. It's very obvious that they've been using more advanced pitching models in terms of what they're seeking for their relievers. And they're going to be one of the best defensive teams in baseball, too, in addition to their base running value. They have multiple guys who rank among the fastest players in baseball, but they also have great defenders all over the field, welcoming Nick Ahmed back to their middle infield, too. So the Diamondbacks defensively, I think, is going to be what drives a lot of their value this season. I think they're going to keep a lot of games close, low scoring with their pitching. Also have one of the best pitching coaches in the game, too, with Brent Strom. So like the Diamondbacks, going to be betting on them a lot on a game-to-game basis this season. Said I do not have futures on them maybe for 2024, but Diamondbacks, check our bingo card on opening day. Anthony and I like them as our favorite underdog bet. My other favorite underdog, though, I'm going to give out the Pittsburgh Pirates at plus 120. Projected Pittsburgh at plus 112. I'm high on Hunter Green. I have strikeout leader, Cy Young bets on Green, but I'm also very high on Mitch Keller. Keller has a career 5 ERA over his final 22 starts last season, 3.22 ERA, 3.8 expected ERA. He's continually tried to alter his pitch mix, searching for the optimal selection. This spring training, 15 innings, 20 strikeouts, 1 walk. We're going to talk about this game more in a minute. Don't love the bullpens. Project them as roughly the same relative to one another. There's a big edge for Pittsburgh here, though, in terms of defense and base running. So the Pittsburgh Pirates down to plus 120 for opening day against the Reds. One of my other favorite underdog selections. We're just going to go ahead and get to our best of the rest, our final bets section. And I want to keep talking about this game between the Pirates and the Reds because I am high on both of these starters for 2023. I think both are going to outpitch their projections. Both are going to outpitch their career averages. Projected the first 5 total between the Reds and the Pirates at 3.94. I would bet that to minus 127 on the under 4.5 between the Pirates and Reds. Anthony, I believe you're on this bet as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bet on 2 pitchers improving. You talked about Mitch Keller, and it's funny, I wrote about this so Tuesday I wrote 7 pitchers I'm looking to bet against this season coming in. Monday I wrote 10 pitchers I'm looking to bet on, and Mitch Keller is somebody who absolutely made the list. The projections don't really love Keller that much. If you look at like the bat and in the bat X projections, they're kind of modest on him, and I don't really blame them. Like you mentioned it. I mean, Keller was pretty terrible at various points of last season. And then, in his other full major league seasons, he's been quite poor, but the 3.9 finishing ERA in 2022 is encouraging. Last year, we said the same exact thing. I remember betting in multiple F5 unders on Mitch Keller early in the season, and they all lost because he got destroyed over and over again. Couldn't find the strike zone, gave up too many homers when nobody in baseball could hit. But the stuff plus is even higher now than it was then. And like you said, from June through the end of the regular season, 3.2 ERA, stuff plus is up to 113. He's one of the biggest gainers in that stat this season. He has the new sweeper slider that he's throwing. So there's a lot of reasons to buy him. And then the question is really going to be for Hunter Green is, can he keep the ball in the yard? We don't have a ton of park factor data yet on what the wind will look like out of Great American, but it doesn't look particularly friendly off the jump for Thursday. Like it's going to be a significant wind edge for the hitters. So that's really the biggest thing for Green is, can he limit that hard contact? Pirates not a lineup that has a ton of slugging in there, even after adding G-Man Choi, Carlos Santana, and with the O'Neill Cruz developing. So I like the under first 5 as well in that matchup. And, one of the pitchers I'm looking to bet against is Alek Manoah I like over in that game at 7.5, minus 110 to the over. Michaelis is a pitcher who had a bit of a breakout last year, but he's a long-term journeyman who relies more on command than stuff. And I'm going to bet against those guys repeating that. If they prove me wrong early in the season, maybe I'll reconsider. But Manoah had a significant velo dip, stuff dip. Concerned about him coming into the season because he's never really been a metrics darling either. I'm also looking to offload him in Dynasty. Hopefully none of my opponents are listening to this, but I like the over in Blue Jays Cardinals over 7.5. I like what the Cardinals lineup looks like this year, especially when you compare it to the end of last season. Newt Barr could be a potential breakout. Jordan Walker has more pop than anybody they were playing in the corner outfield. O'Neal is healthy. Like, this is a lineup that I think is much deeper than it was last season.
So we're in agreement in terms of the angle here fading Manoah. I'm also down on Miles Mikolas, who is another fade candidate, 3.3 ERA last year. 4 were his indicators, ERA indicators closer to 4, and his projections for 2023. Some of them are as low as 4.2 on Mikolas. In terms of Alek Manoah, you mentioned it, not a metric startling, 2.24 ERA last year, expected ERA been at 3.3 in each of his major league seasons. I don't think he is in that Sandy Alcantara, Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer territory, those sub-3 projections, which is where a lot of people put him based on his fastball, how cool he is, how big he is. But he's really more projection-wise number 2 type starter in a rotation in your Joe Musgrove, Luis Castillo range than in terms of being a high-level ace. That said, both of these lineups extremely deep. My biggest concern is defense. Toronto probably has the best defensive outfield in baseball. The Cardinals probably have the best defensive infield in baseball. Both project as extremely good defensive teams, but also both have very deep lineups. I don't really trust the bullpens for either team. That said, the total for the first 5 innings at 3.5, less than 55% of that 7.5, which is usually where you see that first 5 number compared to the full game total. So taking the first 5 over 3.5, minus 115, like that up to minus 125. Not a big bet for me. Projected this line at 3.9 though. So certainly need to take a stance against 2 pitchers I think are fade candidates this season. Let's move on to another game we both have at least some amount of opinion on. The Texas Rangers on opening day, Anthony, against your Phillies. Tell me why you would bet against your Phillies coming off of their World Series run.
Well, big news. The Phillies have acquired Christian Pache. So I've now upgraded their win total projection by 10 wins. I'm kidding. Like a depth outfielder who plays defense and can run. But yeah, the Phillies opening day. If you follow me in the award-winning Action Network app, I grabbed Texas early, minus 115, minus 120. That line has steamed up pretty high now. And I'm also not sure how much we're going to see of Jacob deGrom in this game. It doesn't look like he was fully stretched out quite yet. So he may be on a bit of a cap in terms of how much he is going to be a part of this. But how much better is the Philadelphia lineup without Rhys Hoskins and Bryce Harper and potentially no Derek Hall as well? I'm not sure that he's going to make the opening day start. How much better is that lineup than Texas is? Because otherwise, Texas is at home. They have the better starting pitcher. You won't find a bigger Aaron Nola fan in the world than me. And so betting against him is almost sacrilegious for me, but he's not on Jacob deGrom's level. I mean, Jacob deGrom is on his own level when he's healthy and has looked as good as ever in the limited time we've seen him this spring. So how is this close to a pick 'em? And so that was, I thought, a bad opener. I would lay with first 5 up to minus 140 as well. I know you said the same. The bullpen advantage is probably where Philly is better. They have a deeper bullpen this year than they've ever had in the last, basically since I've been alive. But either way, the first 5 advantages, given that their lineup is healthy in Texas, Philadelphia's is not. I think that's and they have the slightly better starter as well.
Texas also a much better defensive team, more speed. They're going to wreak havoc on people on the base pass in certain games. When they get guys on, they double steal. JT is a good catcher. It's maybe not the best matchup in terms of.
Although Nola's not great at holding runners, so that could be an advantage for Texas in this game.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned it. Like, we're both extremely high on Aaron Nola. I believe we both have Cy Young bets on him. We talked about other pitchers on this podcast who I said are in that 3.3 projected ERA range. Urias, Castillo, Manoah. I have Nola at 2.85. I have Jacob deGrom at 2.16. Nobody else is in deGrom's stratosphere in terms of an ERA projection. Relievers, Pete Fairbanks, other top relievers, they're there. deGrom can just do that for 6 innings in terms of the quality that he can provide. Saris's stuff model, which you've mentioned, he has deGrom's context neutral expected ERA at 1.78. So deGrom is utterly ridiculous in terms of how he projects out, the level that he got his stuff to in recent years. It's why he keeps getting hurt probably, though, is because his arm is literally falling off of his shoulder. He's throwing so hard. But I projected Texas at minus 165 here for the first 5 innings. I would bet them up to minus 155. It's difficult to say how deep DeGrom is going to go into the start, but I would project him for at least 3 or 4 innings. And I would assume Texas is going to piggyback somebody behind him who may have some sort of an effect, maybe a lefty or some sort of varied look that they can get to work off of DeGrom. But Texas first 5 up to minus 155. That is an opening day bet for me. Anthony, any other bets on your card? Any other thoughts? Otherwise, I'll wrap it up with a few more of mine.
I think we have to talk about the Mets versus Sandy. I think that's going to be a highly anticipated matchup. I don't have any bets on it. I think the line's about right. I wrote that I'm a little bit skeptical of Alcantara coming into the season, but I'm also lower than the market on the Mets and lower probably than the market on Scherzer as well. So not sure what to expect in that matchup. Total sitting at 6.5 in Miami. Curious if you have thoughts. I know you're a beloved Mets fan and you also love Sandy. So where do you come down on that matchup? That's my biggest question. I don't have any other bets as far as the first game of the season goes, first day of the season. But I'm very excited for the Diamondbacks to blow a lead after they were one of the best first 5 teams in the whole league last year and continually blew leads for me.
If the Marlins get up to plus 111, I'll probably bet them. That's just a lean for now. Scherzer was really good in spring training. It seems like he keeps wearing down at the end of these seasons after a lot of innings in the middle of the end of the season, but he was dominant in spring training. I think he's ready to go right now. I would probably put him around the peak of his powers. Sandy struggled in that start in the WBC. He kind of struggled down the end of the stretch last year. He's also going to be victimized by his defense a lot this year too, because they won't be able to shift. So I am a little bit lower on Sandy than I was headed into last year. I'm higher, I guess, on Scherzer than I was at the end of last year. It's probably a pass for me, but if the Marlins get the plus 111, I think I would bet them. That said, the Mets, you have to remember, are the greatest opening day team in the history of sports. I believe they have like a 70%, 75% win rate on opening day. So always tough to fade my Mets. We always get off to the hot start and then disappoint everybody later. Couple more bets I have on my card, and then we're going to wrap things up. The Chicago White Sox first 5 plus 130. I've talked about the White Sox extensively being a win total under bet for me this season, but they do mash left-handed pitching, and their lineup, their current players that they have on their roster, they own an OPS of nearly 800 against Framber Valdez in 105 plate appearances. They've been a top 5 team against lefties for each of the past 3 seasons. Now, Jose Abreu certainly was a big part of that. He is certainly down in Houston now and facing them in this game. So not going to benefit them here, but they still project very well as a team offensively against left-handed pitching. Dylan Cease is the better pitcher in my projections. Again, I'm just going to reference it because we've thrown around the ERA numbers a lot in this podcast. 3.1 is where I have Cease. 3.4 is where I have Framber Valdez. And the Astros are also a better team hitting lefties than they are righties like the White Sox are. So the White Sox actually getting the better of the splits, both in terms of their pitcher and the opponent's pitcher here. First 5 White Sox down to plus 120. The bullpen should eventually tighten the game and get the Astros closer to being the favorite where they are. And then finally, the Braves team total over 2.5 plus money. Currently, I like that at any plus money price. Over 2.5 plus 100. Projected this total at 2.7. We faded Patrick Corbin a lot last season. He actually rounded into form down the stretch, and then he sat out when he had a chance to lose his 20th game of the year. Coming back for this season, I think Corbin is still one of the least impressive starters in baseball, one of the least effective starters in baseball, very high in this Braves offense. Not a huge projection edge here, not going to lie, but there actually is an edge. It's not something I'm just blindly betting for fun because I don't like Corbin. Did project the Braves first 5 total at around 2.7, so down to even money at that over 2.5. There is an edge for me. Thank you for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's MLB betting podcast presented by BetMGM. We'll be back here on Friday with another edition of Payoff Pitch and every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday throughout the 2023 MLB season. Best of luck on your bets on opening day.